So everything you've been told about getting healthy might be the exact thing keeping you sick. And on Juneteenth, of all days, I really want to talk about why. When you look at the healthiest people around the planet, they aren't restricting and counting and cutting things out. They're doing the opposite. And I'm going to talk to you about why that's important. So happy Juneteenth. I am grateful you're here on this channel, especially on this day and in this political climate that we're living through right now, if you live in the United States. But I want to point out that resilience is our birthright. Joy is our birthright. And we have really high rates of metabolic disease in this country. It is rising. It is affecting our children. It is affecting all of us. It's affecting our lack of joy and our high stress lives, and the climate is affecting our longevity. But, you know, it's not solved by restricting more. I will say that that is the American way, this that's probably rooted in puritanical systems, but abundance really is our birthright. And I'm going to talk to you about why this is important. So I'm Dr. Jen. I help women and families reverse insulin resistance and metabolic disease with what I like to call joyful medicine. It's where evidence-based lifestyle medicine meets joy, inclusivity, and honors your culture, your life, and your lived experience. So I've got 5 things that will prove this point to you, hopefully, and maybe give you a different perspective on how you look at your health and metabolic disease and longevity and joy and this life. I got a lot today. It's an important day, and I just came back from a festival in my tiny little town here in Vermont, which it's Vermont, so you can imagine it was beautiful. It was wonderful that everybody gathered together, but not a lot of diversity in Vermont. It's a very small group of us there, very small community. But anyway, so let's get to it. I want to talk about these 5 things, and I really think they're important. I think that this joy, let's talk about joy first, because joy is my practice is called joyful medicine, and it's joy for a reason. Joy is really not the reward for getting healthy. It really is how we get healthy. We in modern medical society seem to want to disconnect the brain from the body. But we can just look at history. We can look at our ancestors. We can look at the places around the world. It's intimately connected. You cannot be healthy if you're not joyful, and you can't be joyful if you're not healthy. So they really do go hand in hand. But there's physiology behind it, right? When you are focused on joy, when you remember that joy is present, when you embody joy, it actually lowers your stress response. It lowers cortisol. It stimulates your parasympathetic system. And when you do this again and again over time, this is one of the things I recommend for my patients. I prescribe for my patients joy. It really does work. It lowers your stress response. So it's going to make you more resilient. It's going to change how you respond to the stressors around you. And this is important because we cannot avoid all stressors. This is just a fact of life. And stress is part of life. But how we respond to stress, how our body physically responds to stress, we have some sense of control over it. It is critical. It is mission critical that we find a way to manage stress in a better way, because it is taking a toll. I attended a conference last month, and Dr. Batiste, who's a cardiologist, talked about one of his patients who had a heart attack, didn't have any of the risk factors. But you know what her risk factor was? Stress. Stress is a the implications of having stress and having that cause your heart attack is a much more dismal proposition, because it's related to inflammation, and that can be really hard to control. So managing stress, I'm telling you, is important. We think that we can just push through, or that we should just push through, and that, we'll deal with stress later, or, I don't have time for that. But I'm telling you, you have to make time. Those little pauses, those moments, what I always say, what I do for myself is, when I feel like things are moving faster, or that I need to move faster, that I need to rush, that I need to do something right now. I have to stop myself and think, is it really necessary right this moment? Am I being chased by a bear? Is somebody dying? I do work in the ICU, so sometimes those moments do come, but it's generally not. And so everything is an emergency these days. We're getting constant notifications like, alerts on our phones, like breaking news, breaking this, whatever. And we're not meant to respond that way. We are meant to respond to the signals of nature. So that right there is something that we have to put a pause on. So I'm not talking about toxic positivity. I'm just talking about joy, genuinely enjoying what's around you, being grateful for what's around you, but really just soaking it in and embodying it. So like one example, I always talk about my morning coffee, taking the time to sip my coffee, taste my coffee, smell my coffee, fill the coffee cup, just really, enjoy joy, find joy in that moment. And we have so many moments over the course of the day where we can just take that time and take that space that we deserve and really live that joy. And the other thing, so let's move on. So there is, so I'm going to go over these 5 things, and I'm going to talk about the second one is really important. And it flips everything that we've been taught about food. It flips the way that we approach food. It's it's my way that I recommend. And it really does change your mindset, and it changes, your relationship with food. And I think that's really important. It's this restrictive, puritanical model of what we should be eating. Now, yeah, there are some foods that are less nourishing than others, but I would argue that what we should be focusing on is not what we need to avoid, but we need to focus on what we should abundantly consume. Nature is filled with abundance. There are cues of abundance everywhere. If we can let go of this rigidity, restriction, it just does something to our brains to constantly have to follow rules, count this, fix this, tightly manage that. We're not meant to do that. We're meant to, again, listen to the signals of nature. Nature is abundant. So, what do I mean by abundance? I mean by leaning into those foods that are closest to nature and consuming them abundantly. Really, I'm not saying to eliminate anything, but that simple switch by focusing on abundantly consuming those foods can be a game changer. It is going to change your body. It is going to change your microbiome. It's going to lower your inflammation. It's going to improve your insulin sensitivity. It is going to improve your cholesterol. It is going to improve how your blood vessels function. It is a game changer, I'm telling you. And so instead of thinking about what you shouldn't be having and worrying about that all the time, focus on what you need to include more of. And that is fruits and vegetables, whole grains, beans and legumes, nuts and seeds. These are the foods that our ancestors consumed abundantly. Now, I had a conversation with a man today, wonderful man who came to present his traveling museum, and we talked about meat and how that was present, and meat is part of diet, and that's fine. I'm not saying to eliminate meat. I personally don't eat meat, and it's not required. I will say that it is not required. But if you look at our ancestors, so yes, meat and fish were probably hard depending on what part of the world, what part of Africa, what part of South America, wherever it is you came from, those things may have been present, but they weren't present in abundance. The foundation of the diet was greens and beans and grains. These are the foundation. So if we can build a foundation that's nourishing and healing, then we have room for all foods. But that foundation is key. I'm telling you, our epidemic of metabolic disease, it lies in this lack of fiber, this lack of foundational foods, these lack of foods that are close to the earth. That is really the key. I'm telling you, if you could just switch it so that you're consuming these foods abundantly, and they don't have to be expensive. Let me just tell you, these foods can be the least expensive part of your diet, the least expensive part of your grocery bill. You can buy frozen veggies, you can buy beans in cans or dried beans, or even easier. Root vegetables are abundant and less expensive. So these foundational foods, again, they are abundant. They are abundant in nature. These are what we should be building our diet around. And so that's that abundance, I'm telling you. But this is key. So this anti-restrictive approach is absolutely the key. And so let's talk about this abundance. I want to talk about plant-forward way of eating. Because I will say that the modern American diet consists mainly, I think it's 60% ultra processed food, and then another percentage of the other part of that food is animal foods, animal-based foods. And this is not, again, this is not history. Our bodies aren't meant to process this much. I will say that if you look, I had mentioned that animal foods are not abundant. Like in the past, when you had to catch, go hunting for food, when we were more connected to where our food came from, we were fishing and hunting. And so when we did that, those foods are not abundant, right? You're only catching, and that's got to last a long period of time. It's only a smaller part of what you consume because, again, those other foods are foundational. And again, I'm saying building your plate around plants, fruits, vegetables, whole grains, beans and legumes, nuts and seeds. This fiber satisfies you. Those foods are nutrient dense. They provide an abundance of nutrients, vitamins and minerals, and micronutrients and antioxidants and phytonutrients and all the things that we need to digest those animal foods if we're going to digest them. But really, more importantly, lower inflammation, improve our gut health, like I mentioned, lower our response to glucose, so improve our insulin sensitivity, lower our cholesterol, really just change how our body responds and heals. It creates, I like to always talk about environments of healing. So our external environment is one part, but our internal environment is one. Our mindset, that environment is really important too. So we talked about the joy, we talked about nature, the abundance of nature, but the abundance of plant foods and that heal our body so that it creates a vessel that is ready to heal. It's lower inflammation. It's got a better gut microbiome, so we're able to process the foods that we consume better. So the other environment is our community around us. So we were never meant to do it alone. I will say that a big part of our stress is that disconnection from community. And we really have to lean into community. We often feel like in this American society that we have to go it alone. We have to prove that we have to do it on our own, that we are somehow looked down on if you are leaning into community. And I know that is the American way, which is dysfunctional, right? We're in the society, especially this time that we're living through now, we really need to really reach deep into the community and really be supportive of the community around us and lean into the community, take the support, be willing to be open to receiving support as well. Connection lowers stress. It's also physiologic. It helps protect our health for the long run. Having shared community meals, walking together, holding each other up. But also, for women, we as being successful women, we tend to do everything, right? We tend to think that we're the only ones that can do it right. We think that everybody needs us and we need to be the ones that have to take it all. But, when you look at traditional societies, we were not carrying the burden alone. We were not one silo of family, a single family unit doing it our own. We had like an extended support of the community around us. Those aunties, our extended family was around, extended community was around to support. And that is so important because the burden of taking care of our families alone takes a toll. That is a big factor in our higher development or lower lifespan, lower health span, I will say, because our lives may be longer, shorter for African American women, but even shorter is our health span. We are living those last few years of life with chronic diseases, on medication, losing our independence, higher rates of dementia, and there's a reason for that. These things take a toll. It's measurable, and so that community piece is real. It is serious. So I would encourage you to find those supports and be open to taking it. And so let's talk about the last one, the movement. Movement, it seems so simple and it's been distilled down to this, go to the gym, lift heavy. But that's not the movement I'm talking about. We are meant to move. We are meant, when you look at our ancestors before we had all of these modern conveniences. We have great technology these days, but technology is one thing that holds us back because we have engineered health out of our lives, basically, by making everything so convenient. So you talk about hunting, right? And having to get our food by hunting. But even when you think about it, making our own food, kneading bread, chopping vegetables, taking the time to cook, all of these things that seem like inconveniences are actually the things that support health overall. Moving throughout the day. So when we had to, walk to wherever it was we were working, when our work was more physical, all of these things are reasons that are taking a toll on our health because our muscles are meant to move. Our muscles are metabolic organs. And so when we spend most of our time seated, if we work out in the morning and then sit for the rest of the day, it takes a toll. So thinking about where we can engineer some movement back into our day. And that's unfortunate because we have to really be conscious about adding that movement back in. We can't just expect it to be because we've made everything so convenient. We haven't made things convenient, but modern society has made it convenient. So thinking about where we can add that natural movement back in, and not so that we can burn calories or not so that we can build muscle. Yeah, muscle will come, but it's really just so we can be human, right? Because it is the most natural of human things is to move. And I'll give you an example. A short walk after meals is one way to help lower cholesterol. It helps improve our muscles' response to insulin. It helps when that's stacked over time, it improves our insulin sensitivity, which is the underlying cause of a lot of the metabolic disease that we're seeing in adults as well as children. So that movement is serious. It also gives us more energy. I will say that sometimes you feel like I'm just too tired. But you know what? If you're not thinking about, oh, I have to get this workout in, if you're just thinking, let me just take an afternoon or an evening walk, let me take a break during the day and see if I can walk. Let me take a walk after dinner, just a gentle walk, just so I can get outside for a little bit. Um, these things are restorative and they do help our energy and they help our sleep. So those are the 5 things. I started with the most important one that I think is joy, as a way of reclaiming our joy and managing stress. The next thing was being connected to nature and recognizing the abundance of nature around us. That is much more powerful than a restrictive approach to health and to life. The third one was plant forward eating. So just that plant slant, looking at building a foundation of plants, which means that you have room for all other foods in there when you have that foundation that is strong and that supports healing. The fourth one was community. Community goes without saying. That is where the healing happens. That lowers our stress. We need to be open to leaning on community and asking for community help and giving the help before people ask, and just, spending those quality times unplugged, connected. Movement, thinking about where we can add movement back into our life. How can we make it more automatic, where we can make it more spontaneous without having to think about it? So those are the 5, and it really is the key. These are all, when you look at it, it's just getting back to what is natural, what is part of nature, and what, unfortunately, modern American life has engineered out. And it really is all related to our ancestors, our birthright. So on this Juneteenth, take these 5 principles and see how you can, you know, incorporate them in your life, maybe give you a new perspective on how you look at your health and how we can build health back into our lives and our communities, our children's lives, especially. I do have a free 5 tips to help manage your blood sugar. It's not really managing your blood sugar. It's really focused on improving your metabolic health overall. I say blood sugar because that's the most easily accessible term, but when it comes down to it, I hope you see we're talking about metabolic health overall and our overall health. And so there are 5 simple, joyful steps that when you incorporate them and repeat them over time, they build and they compound and they will lead to improved health. Happy Juneteenth. Thank you for following. Make sure that you like and subscribe. Share this with anybody that you think may benefit. And, come back for more. Thanks for watching.